I transmigrated into a novel as the vicious male supporting character. Since childhood, I have been bullying the female lead. At age 3, I stole her baby bottle. At age 5, I ruined her doll. At age 10, I made her do my homework. After growing up, in order to save my own life, I deliberately enrolled in a different university to avoid the female lead. Unexpectedly, we met again at the freshman welcome party. She tightly grasped my wrist. Her voice was filled with madness. Brother, why are you avoiding me? I had just transmigrated into this world. My head was still a little dizzy. The original host's grandfather bought him a small cake. He was very happy and used it to show off and tease the female lead. The female lead threw a rock at him. It hit his head. The small cake also fell to the ground. Thus, a grudge was formed between them. Every time she saw him, she would find ways to mess with him, determined to take revenge, until the female lead left, and they met again in the snow. Seeing her shine brightly, he fell in love with her. He started persistently chasing her and trying to sabotage her relationship. In the end, he met a tragic fate. At this moment, I touched the spot where I was hit. Luckily, the bump wasn't too big. That little wild wolf cub was not far away, staring at me fiercely, looking like he was ready to pounce on me and snatch something. Wait, why does this girl look like she just got beaten up? How does this count as bullying? Forget it, she's only 6 years old. Not to mention my 22-year-old soul could be her father. Even the original host is already 10. I won't stoop to a kid's level. I quietly picked up the small cake. The cream was no longer edible, but the golden cake at the bottom was still fine. I brushed off the dusty parts and placed it on the wall. Hey, I called out to him, pointing at the small cake with my finger, then turned around and went inside. He was too dirty. I didn't want to interact with him. I hid inside the house and peeked from the window. Never expected such a turn of events in 2007. For a moment, the fierce eyes softened. Then suddenly, like a pile of poop, it happened again. Grabbed the little cake and ran. A few days later, YANDERE started wandering around my house again. I was extremely annoyed. Swiftly, I dumped the leftover food into a big bowl, placed it on the wall, didn't even say a word, turned around and went inside. I didn't want to care about him at all. I even thought about doing what the original owner did, throwing stones or sticks to drive him away. Those eyes stared deeply at people. Felt like he had bad intentions. Grandma couldn't help but ask me, "Why haven't you chased that girl away these past 2 days?" I scratched the back of my head. Teacher said we should be kind and help others. And besides, Grandma, didn't you say? Her dad drinks and doesn't care about her. Her real mom ran away too. How pitiful. Grandma lovingly patted my head and said I had grown up. Matured, hee. But I was only trying to make him remember my act of giving food, and then forget about me in the future. Just like that, a peaceful week passed. I was inside doing my homework. Suddenly, there was a loud crack outside the window. I jumped in shock. The bowl I had left on the wall earlier shattered to meters away from me. I clenched my fist, as if I were crushing YANDERE's dog head. Damn girl, this is the 4th bowl. The first one never came back. The second one disappeared without a trace. The third one ended up in the drainage ditch outside my house. And now the 4th one landed back in the yard. Guess you could call it returning home. And that damn girl had already disappeared without a trace. I placed another bowl on the wall. Next to it, I put a piece of candy. Green, transparent plastic wrapping. You could clearly see the round candy inside. I found a bamboo stick over 1 meter long and hid behind the dense leaves of the evergreen. I felt like I was setting a trap in the snow. Like a mischievous child catching sparrows. Super excited once he comes, I'll deliver justice. Upholding justice. If I don't teach him a lesson, he'll think my family's food falls from the sky. I got bitten by mosquitoes multiple times. Then I finally saw YANDERE limping towards me. I frowned. Wasn't he running fast this morning? How did he end up limping in just a few hours? As he got closer, I saw it clearly. Even through the dirt covering his face, I could still see the bruises and swelling on his forehead. When he saw the candy, his small body suddenly froze, his face filled with shock and confusion. He stood there staring at it for a long time before slowly reaching out. Carefully, as if it was a treasure. I felt a tightness in my chest. Was the heroine this pitiful as a child? She hadn't even seen classroom candy before. As she was about to leave, I hurriedly stepped out. YANDERE was startled. She took a step back in shock. Her dark eyes widened, filled with nervousness and caution. Don't break my bowl. Put it back properly. Got it. I dragged my bamboo stick and walked past her. She stood there without moving. I hesitated, then reached into my pocket and took out the rest of the candy, held it out to her. She stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly turned and ran away. Her steps wobbled as she ran, barefoot, stepping on the rocky road. She didn't seem to feel the pain. I even worried she might stumble and fall. But luckily, she didn't. I looked down at my palm. A few candies lay quietly in it, their wrappers bright, shimmering in the light. I clenched them tightly, deciding to give her another one next time. Later, as we chatted while working in the fields, I heard that Ling Qingyan had been beaten by her father that morning because he woke up from his drunken stupor and had no hot water to drink. I remembered the bleeding wound on her forehead, the way she limped while walking, and the scars on her arms when she reached out for the candy. This meal feels a bit stifling. Sometimes I feel like I'm feeding a dog. Like right now, I didn't see Ling Qingyan, so I tapped the small aluminum bowl with my chopsticks. Why switch to a small aluminum bowl? To save my family's bowls. Before long, Ling Qingyan arrived after hearing the sound. From not far away, he looked at me quietly. His pair of dark, shiny eyes stood out on his dirty, messy face. Alert, defensive, yet faintly expectant. That look in his eyes really tugs at the heartstrings. Silently, I placed a milk candy on my chopsticks. I nodded slightly as a greeting, then turned around and went back inside. I had thought about it. Maybe while he's still young, I could raise a sibling-like fox relationship with him. Who cares who's the older one, right? But on second thought, forget it. I'm not crazy. My parents run a small business in the city. I live with my grandparents in a village not far from town. After elementary school, I'll go to the city for middle school. As for Ling Qingyan, who's 3 years younger than me, he just started elementary school this semester. Apparently, it was the old school way. During the process of fulfilling the compulsory education enrollment task, they discovered that there was an eligible child not enrolled. They found his home, and only then did his drunkard father send him to school. His father didn't want to send him to school because he was a girl. During the 7 days of National Day holiday, I took care of him for 7 days. Even though it was all leftovers, it was still hot and nutritious. From smashing my bowls, to throwing the aluminum bowl and chopsticks back into my yard, to now washing them clean and putting them back in their place. At least he's a bit grateful, but then I dismissed that thought. Grateful my ass. That brat stole my bun. The shop owner handed it over. I was reaching out to take it. He snatched it away and dashed off in an instant. I looked at the shop owner. The shop owner looked at me. He didn't want to be the fool. Silently, I pulled out another coin, bought another steamed bun. A stuffed bun cost 1 yuan, a plain bun cost 0.7 yuan. Grandma gave me 2 yuan, so I still had 0.3 yuan left. Originally, I was going to use 1 yuan to buy it for that brat. The first day after the National Day holiday, I returned to the classroom to collect homework, organize the morning reading session. The boys were being unruly. No matter how I called them, they showed no reaction at all. The anger from having my buns stolen finally had a place to be unleashed. I slammed my book hard on the lectern. The sound, mixed with my fury, was deafening. The classroom fell into dead silence. Everyone turned back in shock. I coldly glared at the group of troublemaking boys. Try me. You little brats. You're here in the morning to read, not to fool around. They immediately returned to their seats. Perhaps my presence carried the authority of an adult. Those 10-year-old kids looked rebellious on the surface, but they silently went back to their seats, hearing their clear reading voices and looking at these young 4th grade students below. It all felt surreal to me. I was a 22-year-old adult, and now I was a 4th grade elementary school student and the class monitor. How impressive. During the second period break exercises, I was even the lead performer. How crazy is that? Luckily, I had the original host memories. Otherwise, I would have embarrassed myself completely. The lead performer stands high up, so I had a clear view of the stage. The first graders were on the left. Among them was a ragged child, like he was dug out from a pile of garbage, getting scolded by a teacher, standing stiffly, eyes looking down, looking completely unfazed, left foot rubbing against the right foot. Just looking at him made me annoyed. Lunch was served at school. The free nutritional meals provided by the government were edible. Enough to sustain life, at least. But it definitely wasn't delicious. Yet Ling Qingyan could eat 3 whole bowls. He devoured the food like a starving ghost reincarnated. Every bite stuffed his mouth full, his cheeks bulging. 2 chews, and he started swallowing. Watching it made me feel really uneasy. In my past life, The girls around me were all raised with love and care. After school in the afternoon, I stayed behind to sweep and lock up. Placed the key on the teacher's windowsill. Just as I stepped downstairs, a few older boys carried Ling Qingyan past me at full speed. They whooshed by right before my eyes. I stood there for a moment, then let out a sigh, turned back upstairs and knocked on the 6th grade teacher's door. Consider it an act of justice. The teacher was very worried. I wasn't. It's not like he'd die from it. By the time we found him, Ling Qingyan had already been thrown into the roadside paddy field, soaked from head to toe. He sat at the edge of the field, small and lonely. A pang hit my heart. The original host had witnessed this before. Did nothing. Even mocked him. Splashed water and threw mud at him. Only left after having enough fun. I walked to the edge of the field, held out my hand. The mud-covered boy sat still. His eyes were sharp and icy. They should have been innocent, carefree at this age, but they were filled with a deep, vengeful gloom. I thought for a moment, held out a candy. His pupils slowly shifted toward the candy. His dark eyes slightly narrowed. A trace of grievance flickered across them. Come here. I moved the candy closer. It took him a long time, but he finally tried to stand up. The mud was heavy, pulling his small body down. He struggled, using both hands and feet, standing up, then falling again. Finally, he managed to stand and walk toward me. A hand covered in mud, so filthy that not a bit of skin color was visible, reached out. I grabbed his hand and washed it in the water. He was so thin, almost just skin and bones. I felt a deep unease in my heart. Let's wash the mud off first. The teacher beside us frowned, as if dealing with the biggest headache of her life. In the end, she looked at me and said, "Take him home, classmate." I replied indifferently, "Teacher, you should probably handle this properly. Ling Qingyan's father is a notorious drunk in the village. When he's drunk, he beats people up." In the end, they contacted the parents of several 6th graders. The parents discussed and took Ling Qingyan to get cleaned up. He even got changed into someone's old clothes. After all these days, I finally got to see the female lead's real face. An oval face, big eyes, fair skin. Aside from being too skinny, she wasn't bad looking. As expected of a female lead, she followed right behind me, carrying someone else's old backpack. The huge bag bottomed out, almost reaching her knees. Inside, there were old textbooks from some 6th grader. Her original backpack was pitch black. One strap broken, tied together in a messy knot. The zipper was broken, gaping open like a beast mouth. Who knows from which trash heap she picked it up. Now, it had met its fate in the water. I turned around and looked at her. She stopped and stared at me coldly. "I didn't like what you did this morning. Stealing my bun. If it happens again, I'll definitely hit you. Try me." She looked up and glared at me fiercely, then turned and ran away. I called after her, "Candy." She stopped abruptly, then dashed back, grabbed the candy, and ran off again. I couldn't help but scoff. Stupid brat. When I got home, Grandma asked, "Why didn't that girl come over today?" I said I didn't know, maybe because I said I'd hit him. Now he holds a grudge against me. Knocking the bowl didn't bring him back. The food left on the wall wasn't taken. Surrounded by flies. Maybe having lunch at school is just enough for him to get by. Maybe he doesn't need the food I leave anymore. I decided to wait 2 more days. If he didn't eat, I'd stop leaving it. But I forgot. This isn't just any novel. The female lead wasn't just occasionally insane. She was always insane. He strangled a cat to death, right in front of me, on the village road. A motorcycle taxi sped past, carrying people at full speed. A small kitten couldn't dodge in time and got run over. Blood gushed from its mouth. Its limbs twitched. It couldn't even make a sound. It wouldn't survive. Ling Qingyan was just 2 meters away from the kitten. He witnessed the whole thing. I was a few steps behind him. He stood there for a long time, then slowly walked over, grabbed the kitten by its ear. The kitten was still struggling, twitching, but barely moving. I thought he would move it to the side of the road. Maybe pet it, comfort it. I thought too much. He gripped its head with one hand, held its neck with the other, and twisted hard. A chill shot through my spine. Every hair on my body stood on end. My scalp went numb. I stepped back. He turned to look at me. His eyes were indifferent, as if they held not a single trace of human warmth. A devil, yet almost godlike. He didn't move, and I didn't dare to. The autumn wind carried a chill that froze me to the bone. Until another motorcycle roared past. Until the laughter of students broke the silence. Only then did I feel like I was back in the human world. And then he moved. He slowly pulled the lifeless kitten into his arms, then walked down a small path along the fields. I hesitated for a moment, then followed him. I was afraid he had lost his mind, that he might roast the cat and eat it, but he didn't. When we reached a small grove, he used a broken branch to dig a hole, placed the kitten inside and buried it, even covered it with layers of dry leaves. I looked at his small figure and suddenly understood why he had killed the kitten so decisively, rather than struggle in pain until death. It was better to die instantly. Better a short pain than prolonged suffering. But he wasn't even 7 years old. I couldn't imagine what kind of life he had lived to make him so ruthless at such a young age. I reached into my backpack and took out a lidded lunchbox. Back in 3rd grade, when I had a fever and couldn't eat, my grandma used this lunchbox to bring me porridge Linkingian. This lunchbox is for you. Eat lunch at school and bring another bowl home. Make sure you tell your teacher. He turned to look at me, his eyes cold and deep, like a frozen lake in winter. Only silent emptiness remained. Seeing no reaction from him, I raised my voice. Come take it. Slowly, he stood up and walked over, stopped right in front of me, motionless. I bent down, reached over his shoulder, unzipped his bag, and stuffed the lunchbox inside. He already smelled bad again. I wrinkled my nose. You're a girl. You should change clothes and bathe regularly. He had no clothes. I paused, thinking. Then took his hand. His hand was so dark and filthy. I sighed internally. Every morning when you wake up, wash your face. Come home with me. Pulling him along, I explained my plan to my grandparents, then dug out some of my old clothes, packed them into a bag for him. I also carried a wash basin outside to the courtyard wall. Made him watch carefully. Learn how to soak your clothes with detergent. Count from 1 to 100, then step on it again. Scrub it with your hands once more. Rinse it 3 times with clean water. Then hang it up to dry. Got it, he nodded. Grandpa and Grandma finished cooking and invited him to stay for dinner. He shook his head and refused. I scooped some food into a small aluminum bowl and handed it to him. Only then did he take it. Squatting at the door, he devoured it like a starving wolf. They say some people spend a lifetime trying to heal their childhood wounds. With a childhood like Ling Qingyan's, it might take several lifetimes to recover. His family was dirt poor. His father used the meager government assistance to buy alcohol instead, left him to fend for himself. There was barely any food, no real parenting. His father only cared about himself. No one looked after him. When Ling Qingyan got hungry, he scavenged for food anywhere he could. If he found nothing, he stole. If he got caught, he was dragged back to his father. Without a word, his father would beat him mercilessly, even though he was a girl. Or maybe because he was a girl. Now, leaning against the wall, I listened to the loud thudding noises in the hallway. If I didn't know better, I might think someone was outside beating the dust off a blanket, using a hanger to pat the fabric, making it soft and fluffy. But no, this was a beating. A small child, getting punched, slapped, and kicked by his own father. With no hesitation, no restraint, each blow landing on his body, each sound hitting my heart. The school bathrooms weren't on every floor. They were located along the edge of the playground. I went downstairs to use the restroom, just in time to see him getting kicked. He flew from the classroom door to the balcony wall, like a ragdoll tossed out of someone's home. Sitting there, powerless to resist, I quickly ducked behind a pillar. I didn't want him to see me. Always advising that drunkard that you can't beat the child like that. His father said that stealing should be punished like this. If he's scared of being beaten, he won't steal again. What did he steal? He stole someone else's hanger to wash clothes. I taught him how to wash clothes. He was obedient and washed them, but his family had no laundry detergent, no hangers. I clenched my fist in pain. My nails dug into my flesh. The pain kept me rational. I couldn't rush out and beat that scumbag. So, when he left and reached the stairway, I saw him. I suddenly rushed out and slammed straight into his back. The stench of alcohol almost made me gag. He fell, and I fell too. I quickly got up, lowered my head, and apologized. It was Uncle Lin. Sorry, Uncle Lin. I didn't do it on purpose. I was rushing to the restroom and didn't see the way. Sorry. Uncle Lin glanced at me and said, hurry and go. Okay, thank you, Uncle Lin. I ran quickly to the restroom. After school, I went home. I organized the hangers at home, separated the deformed and peeling ones, then poured half a pack of detergent into a mineral water bottle, placed it on the wall, and knocked on an aluminum basin. Ling Qingyan peeked out from behind someone else's wall. I pointed at the stuff, signaling him to take it home. He hesitated and walked over slowly. His hair looked washed, though still yellowish from malnutrition. But it was clean, and he had changed clothes. It was a boy's outfit. He didn't have the usual bad smell anymore, but some areas weren't washed properly. I touched his ear, his back, and entire neck. When washing your face and taking a bath, you need to clean these areas too. He nodded slightly. I handed him a candy and softly asked, "Does your body hurt?" The child's hand holding the candy was stained with soy sauce. He clenched it tightly, lowered his eyelids, and stood straight. This is not just being stubborn. It's the resilience of someone struggling to survive. I reached out and ruffled his hair. My voice softened unconsciously. "It will get better. It will definitely get better. Your biological mother will come to take you. Your stepfather will treat you well. And you'll have an older brother who takes care of you. You'll also grow to love him." Ling Qingyan gazed at me silently. His eyes were dim and unreadable. Every morning before school, no matter how early I got up, my grandmother was always up before me. She had already prepared breakfast. She let me eat first. After eating, I could read for a while. Once I packed my school bag, my grandmother handed me a plastic bag. Inside were dull-colored sweet potatoes. They had been roasted in the stove overnight. "Give them to that girl." I called Ling Qingyan over. I reminded him to say thank you. He remained silent. Grandmother patted his head. No need. It's just a couple of worthless sweet potatoes. Eat well and fill your stomach, so you can focus on school. I didn't expect much from him. I didn't have high hopes. I tugged at his sleeve and pulled him outside. "Thank you." His voice was as soft as a whisper. I thought I was imagining it. I patted his head. "Good job. Let's go." Once we reached school, I went upstairs. He stayed on the first floor. During the break after morning exercises, he was standing at the classroom door again. The teacher, strict and impatient, questioned him. "Why didn't you do your homework?" He stood there silently, like a wooden stump. "If you don't do it again, I'll call your father." That threat might have been harsh, but Ling Qingyan showed no reaction. I had no intention of stepping in, and there was no system forcing me to intervene. Maybe, deep down, I was just a saint at heart, thinking, at least let him learn to take care of himself first. So after school, when I saw my grandma planting cabbages, I knocked on the aluminum basin with chopsticks. I called Ling Qingyan over to learn. The little girl rarely looked so confused while learning. I looked at him and said, "Learn it and go home to plant. Support yourself. Stop stealing food." He watched seriously until the end. I served him a bowl of rice. I put half a pack of cabbage seeds in his hand. "Go back and scatter them in the soil. If you don't understand, ask." Watching him walk away, I couldn't hold back. I shouted, "Remember to do your homework." Ling Qingyan and I developed an understanding. In the morning, he would come to my house and have some breakfast. Then he would follow me to school. After school, he would wait for me and follow me home. Some classmates joked that I had a little tail. I ignored them. Some other boys and girls mocked him, calling him a tag-along. He didn't react much, but when someone threw mud at him, he went crazy and charged forward. He pinned someone half a head taller than him to the ground. I struggled to pull him away and scolded him. Instead, he looked at me and said, "Your clothes can't get dirty." I sighed and patted the dirt off his clothes. If clothes get dirty, you can just wash them. But if you get hurt, it will hurt. To prevent him from being bullied by older students, I made him do his homework at the entrance of their old office. After school, I would pick him up. Everyone started harvesting sweet potatoes. I was also in the field, helping my grandparents dig them out. I was responsible for shaking off the dirt from the sweet potatoes and pulling off the roots. I saw Ling Qingyan standing still in the distance. His gaze was numb and cold as he looked over. An idea suddenly came to me. "Grandma, I'll be back in a bit." I found a small cloth bag and gave it to Ling Qingyan. I told him to bring it with him later to find me. When he saw me leaving, he immediately followed. I pushed him back. I pressed his shoulders and instructed, "You stay here. Count to 100 before coming over, and bring the bag." "Did you hear me?" My grandparents asked me where I had been. I said I saw Ling Qingyan and told him to go back and get a bag. Later, he would help us carry the sweet potatoes, and we'd give him a few. Ling Qingyan arrived with the bag, a small child, holding the bag upright in a proper posture. The bag covered most of his body. Suddenly, I felt a bit emotional. Maybe he thought I had given him something very important, so he held it with such proper posture. I loudly called out, King Yin is here. Hurry and help us with these. When you're done, pick a few sweet potatoes to take home. My grandparents glanced over and loudly echoed, yes. Little girl, hurry up. We'll help you carry some back later. He seemed confused and busy. Maybe this was the first time he had ever received such kindness. It wasn't charity from above, nor was it given with disdain. He looked at me. I shouted at him, hurry up. It'll get dark soon. He worked hard. His speed was fast, and he was very meticulous. That small figure squatting in the field was somewhat heartbreaking. After some time, the cabbages sprouted, a lush green patch. Ling Qingyan, imitating others, gathered many wooden sticks and fenced in the small vegetable plot to prevent other people's chickens and ducks from ruining it. A few days ago, he watched Uncle Chung planting cauliflower. Uncle Chung gave him a few seedlings. My grandma told me to bring him some radish seedlings and some cabbage seedlings. Your cabbages are growing really well. I walked around them, genuinely admiring his skill. Perhaps this is what they call a golden touch. Good at nothing. I'll pick some for you. He was about to step in without a second thought. I pulled him back and stopped him. I handed him the vegetable seedlings my grandma asked me to bring. Plant them as soon as possible. He looked worried, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. I braced my knee. Half squatting, I asked him, how many sweet potatoes do you have? 3 big bags. In a few days, I'll bring you 10 pounds of rice too. By then, more or less, some people will follow suit. Clean up your house. Find a place to store them. He nodded lightly, then suddenly turned and ran home. As he ran, he turned back and said, I'll bring you some water. A 6 or 7-year-old child, learning how to behave like an adult. I couldn't tell if I felt sorrow or relief. My heart felt heavy. He carefully held a small porcelain bowl, spotlessly clean. The water was crystal clear. I washed it. He rubbed his fingers. The moment I finished drinking, I washed it. I encouraged him by ruffling his fluffy hair. You did great. Turns out, it was because I hesitated before drinking. He was afraid I'd think it wasn't clean, so he explained softly. I drank the water, handed the bowl back to him. It's winter. Remember to drink hot water, or you'll catch a cold easily. He nodded. At that moment, a man suddenly appeared at the doorway, his gaze lecherous. I hadn't even reacted. Ling Qingyan immediately turned around. That small figure slightly spread his arms, like a protector. I was stunned. So small, so scared, so brave. Uncle Lin, my grandma asked me to bring you some vegetable seedlings. I'm leaving now. I patted Ling Qingyan on the shoulder. Be careful. Don't provoke him. I'm leaving. But I didn't expect that the next day, Ling Qingyan's teacher called me to the office. Said that Ling Qingyan got into a fight. Told me to take care of it. I was very surprised. Teacher, I'm not Ling Qingyan's guardian. I have no obligation to stand here and listen to your lecture. The teacher was momentarily speechless. But you want to change him. You also want him to improve. That's your kindness and professional duty as a teacher. But that shouldn't be imposed on me. I'm not related to him. I'm just an older brother from his village. Just someone he knows. Walking out of the office, Ling Qingyan stood at the door like an abandoned puppy, both aggrieved and angry. His fists clenched tight, glaring at me fiercely. I smacked his head. I'm kind to you, because I'm a good person, but I'm not your mom. Some things are not my responsibility. I turned and walked away. The brat was still angry, but I was even angrier. Out of nowhere, I got scolded. Saying that as an older brother, I didn't take care of my little sister. I turned back and smacked him on the back. Why did you fight? Did you really have to slam someone against a wall? You went too hard. If the teacher calls your dad would beat you to death. Hurry up and apologize to your classmate, or don't talk to me. Ling Qingyan glanced at me quickly, then shot into the office like a bullet. Finally, he knelt down in front of the little boy and loudly said, I'm sorry. I was speechless. The teacher in the office was also speechless. Even the crying little boy was scared stiff. His mouth hung open, forgetting to cry. My eyes suddenly stung. This kid. Did he think that apologizing meant kneeling? On the way back, I gave him a long lecture. Apologizing is about recognizing your mistakes and sincerely saying sorry, and mistakes must be corrected. Otherwise, Saying sorry is meaningless. No matter what, you shouldn't kneel easily. Unless it's something very important. Or a situation where kneeling is unavoidable. I kept shattering. The child's eyes sparkled, curving into little crescent moons. A face full of joy. Strange, being lectured yet so happy. Final exam review phase. I accidentally saw an 18-point Chinese test paper. I was beyond shocked. The heroine, a top student in life, yet she scored 18 in Chinese. The book didn't describe much of her childhood. Only when the male supporting character pestered her in college. It was mentioned in their conversations and her memories. So, whether she really scored 18 in first grade is unknown. I started writing on the crumpled paper, glancing at Lin Qingyan, who was doing homework with his back to me. Sneaking peeks at me. Where's the math test? He paused, slowly, reluctantly. He pulled out another crumpled paper from his bag, though the red pen marks were very eye-catching. 83, not bad, not bad. Just a subject imbalance. Only 2 weeks left before finals. There's not much that can be done. I taught him how to organize his bag, told him to spend the weekend at my house, redo all the test papers he could find in a notebook. Anything he didn't understand, I'd explain. I thought it was like New mending the sky with insufficient materials. Turns out, it was like Jingwei filling the sea. He didn't understand this or that. He couldn't do this or that. I finally understood the pain of being a teacher. No hope for the final exam. We'll make up for it during winter break. After the exam, I had him bring over his Chinese and math textbooks. I started teaching him from the beginning. My grandparents happily said, Xiao Huai has become a teacher. Whether I was great or not, I didn't say. But this student was truly difficult to teach. The final grades came out. I scored 98 in Chinese, 100 in math, 99 in English, and Lin Qingyan scored 45 in Chinese, 85 in math. I gritted my teeth, and once again mustered the courage to take on tutoring duties. I don't know if he suddenly had an epiphany or what, but Lin Qingyan learned really fast, except for Chinese, which he sometimes just couldn't grasp. Everything else, he picked up quickly once taught. My parents came back to take me to the city for a trip, and they also brought back the practice books I asked for, reference books and calligraphy workbooks. I left Lin Qingyan a ton of homework, ensuring that his winter break would be completely filled. As I was leaving, he gazed at me longingly, his big eyes full of reluctance. I patted his head and said, I'll be back soon. I'll bring you candy and toys when I return. By the time you finish these practice books, I'll already be back. Honestly, I could have stayed, but it seemed like the original owner of this body would always spend some time with their parents during winter and summer breaks. I couldn't be an exception. During the new year, I brought Lin Qingyan to boxes of poppers and to spinning tops and a pair of shoes. I bought them using my own pocket money, as well as the reward money my parents gave me. I emphasized, hoping he would remember all the good things I did, so that when we meet again, we can smile at each other and not have him wanting to kill me. He held the shoebox for a long time without reacting. I bent down to look at him. Lin Qingyan's eyes turned red. Tears welled up in his eyes. Even the tip of his nose turned red. Seeing him like this made my heart ache a little. My throat tightened. I reached out and patted his head, ruffling his hair. His hair is so clean now. Shiny and neat, smooth and soft. It's grown much longer. Happy New Year, Lin Qingyan. He pressed his lips together and finally looked up at me. Crystal clear tears rolled down from his red eyes. Tears swirled at the edge of his cheeks, about to fall. Thank you, brother. Happy New Year, brother. If colors could represent emotions, then my feelings right now would be a white canvas splattered with paint, a chaotic mess, heartbroken by his unfortunate situation, sad and sympathetic because of his tears, proud and satisfied that he had learned to take care of himself, and joyful when he called me brother. Lin Qingyan's father was miraculously sober for one day during the new year. He cooked, put up spring couplets, performed ancestral rituals, and set off firecrackers. Then he got drunk again. I took Lin Qingyan and my uncle's daughter, along with a big group of kids from the village, carrying red lanterns as we visited homes for New Year's greetings. When we returned, our pockets were filled with treats and scattered New Year's money. I stuffed all the money and snacks into Lin Qingyan's pockets. Take these home and have a little feast. He looked at me, teary-eyed. Brother, I pushed him along. Hurry home. It's getting late. Remember to wear your new clothes tomorrow. Put on your new shoes and start a fresh journey. Lin Qingyan left, turning back every few steps. The next day, on the first day of the Lunar New Year, Lin Qingyan didn't wear his new shoes. He said he couldn't bear to. An entire semester passed. His shoes only changed from one pair of tattered shoes to another. Not once did he wear his new shoes. This semester, he scored perfect marks in both subjects. I was proud of him for a long time. All those times I made him recite text on our way to school, memorize ancient poems, and taught him math on weekends, had finally paid off. He had grown taller. In second grade, he even became the class monitor. At this point, Lin Qingyan had the look of a determined yet poor student, wearing the same clothes and shoes, but always clean. His hair tied up in a high ponytail, back straight, eyes looking ahead, his face expressionless, but he carried himself with dignity. A true symbol of resilience from a poor family. The feeling of an unyielding child. Public welfare. This is exactly the kind of character an advertisement for public welfare needs. Isn't that right? He has to grow vegetables to feed himself, take odd jobs everywhere to earn food, and still ensure that he doesn't fall behind in his studies. The neighbors are kind and understanding, always willing to ask him for help with something. Then they give him some rice, flour, or vegetables in return, preserving his dignity, while allowing him to live with confidence. Life continues. As long as he avoids his father, it's fine. As he grew older, he ran faster. He could escape most of the time. Even if he got beaten occasionally, he found ways to break free. He would run to my house. I would apply some iodine for him. At the end of the semester, he came to me, beaming with joy, holding his certificate. I hugged him and spun him around several times. That wasn't just his certificate. It was proof of my teaching efforts. Usually, he failed his test, but at the end of the semester, he aced them. I asked him why he usually did so poorly. He said he couldn't understand the teacher's lessons, but he could understand when I explained it. All right then, I must have a talent for teaching. In third grade, teacher Lin Qingyan met me. He said Lin Qingyan had written an essay. The title was My Brother. He said it was obvious that it was about me, and it was deeply moving. It even made him cry. He had planned to read it aloud as a model essay in class, but Lin Qingyan suddenly rushed to the podium. He begged the teacher not to, so the teacher had to give up. In the end, he just kept praising me, saying I was kind, helpful, and that I would have a bright future. He even said he learned a lot from me. That helping others isn't just about pulling them out of the mud, but also teaching them how to clean off the dirt and how to avoid falling into the mud again. My teacher praised me too. Teachers from other classes praised me. Even the principal praised me, all because of that essay. In sixth grade, I was recognized as one of the top 13 students. One of the criteria was being helpful to others, helping younger students overcome the shadows of domestic violence, helping him receive support from kind neighbors, helping him develop a love for learning and achieve outstanding results. I never thought that my actions would be seen as something so great by others. I believed that everything would be fine once his biological mother came to take him away. That would be the happy ending. But an accident still happened. I never expected his father to be so utterly heartless. In the dead of night, when everything was silent, the sound of violent beatings broke the stillness. It was horrifying. I heard Aunt Wang, who lived near Lin Qingyan, shouting, "Lin Qing, you heartless bastard. If you keep hitting her, your daughter is going to die." People hurriedly threw on their clothes and rushed over. Lin Qingyan was tied up, hanging from a ceiling beam, her head drooping, completely unconscious. Even a tiger would not eat its own cubs. So, what kind of monster was Lin Qing? The weather was already freezing. She was just a little girl, a 10-year-old girl, and she was hanging there, beaten by her own father. How hopeless must she have felt? When she lost consciousness, did she feel like she was finally freed? A few villagers carefully untied her and brought her down. I quickly wrapped her in a thick nightgown. Her whole body was ice-cold. Her pale skin was covered in old and new wounds, layer upon layer of scars. I knew she wouldn't die, but my heart ached. The pain twisted inside me. It was the 28th day of the 12th lunar month. New Year's was just around the corner. Other children were at home being spoiled by their families. Even if they misbehaved, they would be forgiven because it's the new year. But during the new year, Lin Qingyan was at home, being beaten black and blue by her own father. She was taken to the hospital. 2 of her ribs were broken. She had minor internal bleeding. What kind of scum is Lin Qing? It's simply outrageous. After graduation, no one took care of Lin Qingyan. It's quite strange. Lin Qing had no relatives at home. In the village, He was probably set up as a gentlemanly protagonist. My grandfather said a few families pooled their money. A woman from the village, Aunt Shen, was in town taking care of her daughter-in-law after childbirth. She also brought meals to Ling Qingyan. On New Year's Eve, I went to visit him. The child sat motionless on the hospital bed, like an empty shell without a soul. I felt a deep ache in my heart. I walked up and spoke softly. He looked up, his eyes still carrying a cold expression. I gently hugged him. It's okay, it's okay. It will get better. He couldn't be discharged even during the new year. I bought him new clothes, new shoes, and some snacks. I also gave him a red envelope for New Year's money. When I was leaving, the child touched his face and said, "Thank you." Not long after, Ling Qingyan was taken away by his mother. It was good for him to be away from that awful home, to start a new life. Ling Qingyan, I hope that when we meet again, you will have found happiness. Until 10 years later, a new semester. The same old opening ceremony. The same scorching sun. The new students sat up straight, faces filled with excitement and joy. Sweat dripping down, their sunburned faces still full of energy. The older students looked like wilted eggplants, drained of energy, half alive, their faces full of resentment and impatience. My roommates and I were cursing the scorching sun, the unbearable heat, the school leaders who insisted on holding the ceremony at 9 a.m., and the host who had just told us not to use umbrellas. Hello, everyone. I am the freshman representative, Ling Qingyan. A voice as refreshing as a cool spring in a deep forest suddenly reached my ears. I was stunned. It was simply unbelievable. I suddenly turned my head toward the podium. The speaker was shining under the sunlight. Ling Qingyan, wasn't he supposed to be at Jingbai University with the male lead? This is Kunnan University. And I'm a junior. Shouldn't he still be a senior in high school? Same name. No, it's not just the same name. It is Ling Qingyan. In the classroom, in the dorm, his photos and videos were passed around more than once. Even the smallest news about him. The once little girl had grown into a graceful young woman. Every smile and frown was gentle and poised. Every gesture was elegant and refined. His eyes still carried a cold glimmer, a calm, icy stillness. The sharpness and fierceness seemed to be hidden behind that calm and chill. Yet it felt like it could be revealed at any moment. A subtle clue. Many boys were infatuated with him. The school forum was filled with all kinds of photos and videos of him. Even fanfictions sprouted up like mushrooms after the rain. He had arrived. From my roommate's discussions, I realized it was as if a deity had returned from trials. Ling Qingyan had reclaimed his position as the main character. All eyes were on him. He was the bright moon in the night sky. Cold as frost, unreachable. But he didn't recognize me. A chance encounter at the cafeteria, he was walking straight toward me, as I debated whether to greet him. He passed by without a glance. My heart suddenly sank. I let go of all my previous hesitation. After all, I had only helped him clean up leftovers, and tutored him for a while. Was that really worth being remembered? I was just being sentimental. So at the freshman welcome party, after I finished hosting, he went on stage to perform. I, too, passed by him without looking. Because of his flawless piano performance and singing, Ling Qingyan became a sensation in school. I thought passing by each other like strangers would be our ending. Dorm. The dorm leader organized a gathering between the boys and girls' dorms. We dressed up, thinking we looked incredibly handsome. When we arrived at the buffet restaurant, that fresh and slender girl made me stop in my tracks. Ling Qingyan, why was the Ling Qingyan I knew here? Was I captivated by beauty? I shook my head. What about the campus goddess? It took a few twists and turns just to arrange this meet. I wasn't sure. As I pushed open the door, a few girls looked up and saw us. Their eyes flickered with amazement. Ling Qingyan glanced up briefly, then lowered his head without any expression. No surprise upon seeing me. Nothing else either. Maybe, in his eyes, I was just a stranger. That was fine, we wouldn't interfere with each other. Kezan, that guy, went straight to sit across from Ling Qingyan. Hello, I'm Kezan. This is Wang Chengyu. I turned to face a very straightforward, slightly shy girl with a smile. The rest of the roommates also took their seats. Each girl had a different aura. All were quite attractive, but Ling Qingyan stood out the most. I observed Ling Qingyan's expression. wondering if he would react upon hearing my name. Would there be any change? But he remained composed and calm, no change at all. I no longer cared. I simply focused on the girl in front of me. She caught my gaze and gave a shy smile. I smiled back warmly. Asterisk bang. Asterisk I turned toward the sound. The cup in front of Lin Qingyan had tipped over. Water spilled all over the table. The people nearby scrambled in a panic. They grabbed tissues to help wipe the table. Kezin even asked with concern if his clothes were wet. Lin Qingyan shook his head. His drifting gaze met mine. I nodded at him and looked away. Besides a little surprise, the girl started introducing. Hello, seniors. This is Lin Qingyan. I am Su Yan. This is Xia Bingbing. They shook hands and sat down. My phone suddenly vibrated. Wang Shenyu at Kezin. I want to swap goddesses with you. You can't handle it. Let me do it instead. Let me switch. The roommates started discussing. I silently turned off my phone. After coming out of the restroom, the person sitting across from me had changed to Lin Qingyan. I looked at Lin Qingyan, then looked at the others. What are these beasts up to? They actually swapped seats so blatantly. I looked at Lin Qingyan across from me. He was eating with his head lowered. His bangs covered his forehead. His eyebrows and eyelashes were long and thick, fluttering slightly. His entire presence exuded a sense of obedience. A well-behaved child's aura. Isn't this a little strange? Just now, he was cold and distant, hard to approach. Now he looked so gentle and easy to bully. Damn girl, did you master the art of face changing in these 10 years? I have a feeling he's up to no good. What kind of trick is he planning now? I didn't say anything. Kept my head down the entire time. My phone vibrated, a notification at me. The little girl has been glancing at you multiple times, looking more and more aggrieved. Her eyes are about to turn red. At least lift your head and look at her. Say something to her. Scumbag. I lifted my head and looked at Lin Qingyan. He buried his head even lower. Only his delicate nose bridge was visible. The tip of his nose was slightly red, as if he had been crying. The corners of his eyes, fleetingly visible, were also red. He looked like a pitiful child who had been abandoned. His expression was full of grievance. I was utterly shocked. This wasn't the Lin Qingyan I knew. As a child, he was cold and fierce. Even when feeling wronged, he was always reserved and restrained. There was always a sense of stubbornness in him. So, I suppose the male lead did a great job taming him. But now, he had the appearance of a well-behaved, innocent, and pure girl. I am just a side character. I must remember my place. I pursed my lips and chose to focus on eating instead. I am a heartless scumbag, staying away from the female lead and heading towards a brighter future. So after dinner, I simply waved and said, "Bye-bye, brother." Lin Qingyan took a half step forward. There was a cautious yet hopeful glimmer in his eyes. Though he was careful, his intentions were crystal clear. He wanted to get closer to me, but I wasn't sure in what way. Was it because of our friendship from 10 years ago, or because of today's chance encounter? So I refused. I have to go finish my assignments. Bye. In the end, no one went to the movies. On the way back, Kezin asked me, "You really don't have any feelings for that junior?" I didn't turn my head, just glanced sideways at him. Do you think I'm as desperate as you? Yeah, you're noble. You're amazing. You're the good big brother everyone loves. If they can't be your girlfriend, they'll settle for being your little sister. You have food to eat, so you don't understand the hunger of others. I was about to retort, when my phone suddenly popped up with a friend request. I am Lin Qingyan. The profile picture was of a mountain landscape, like a traditional ink painting. Half of it was a dark ink mountain. The other half was a pale sky. The scenery looked somewhat familiar, but I couldn't immediately recall where I had seen it before. Nickname, Qingyan. I hesitated. Kezin pressed down on my hand. Wang Shenyu reached out and helped me accept the request. I won't allow you to refuse being a beast. I don't agree either. Thank you very much. You're welcome. 1 week later, my roommate asked me how things were progressing. I said we hadn't talked. I couldn't bring myself to be a beast, but it wasn't like we hadn't spoken at all. We exchanged a few simple messages. Lin Qingyan asked, "Brother, what are you doing?" I replied, getting ready to sleep. "Do not disturb," he said. "Brother, let me buy you a milk tea." I refused. "I'm on a diet. Do not disturb." Then he asked, "Brother, really dislike me?" I replied, "In class. Do not disturb." He asked, "Brother, do you play games?" I replied, "Doing homework. Do not disturb." Then one day, Kezin cursed me in the group chat. "Scumbag, scumbag. The junior is about to cry in her dorm. Can't you at least reply properly?" I was a bit confused. How do you know she's about to cry? He sent a photo in the group chat. She was holding her phone in both hands, slumped against the bed frame, her head slightly drooped, her brows furrowed, her eyes rimmed red. Tears shimmered in her eyes. The tip of her nose was red. Her lips were pursed in frustration and sadness. She looked like she had suffered the greatest injustice. I was stunned by the photo. So, when I rejected her, she had been looking at her phone like this. Was this really Ling Qingyan? Or had I mistaken him for someone else? Did I misremember the book, or enter the wrong novel? I was in shock. Wang Shenyu at me, scumbag. How could you be so heartless? Liu Yi at me, scumbag. Hurry up and call her. Tell her you love her, Kezan explained. Su Yan said. Every time little Ling Qingyan gathered the courage to send a message, he would carefully and eagerly wait for your reply. Then his disappointment was visible to the naked eye. From hopeful to dejected, and finally to completely pitiful, tears threatening to fall. He's so well-behaved, scumbag. How could you be so heartless? A barrage of accusations made my head spin. Then, under their pressure, I gritted my teeth and replied to Ling Qingyan's invitation for a walk. In the middle of a game, do not disturb. I was just that consistent, cold-hearted, but it wasn't entirely false. This half-true, half-fake Ling Qingyan was too much for me. I kept feeling like he was about to snap at any moment. I needed to stay far away. Then Kezan and the others planned a barbecue gathering. Only when I arrived did I realize Ling Qingyan was there too. Ling Qingyan was sitting stiffly in a chair. The moment he saw me, he clumsily stood up. Brother ... he called out. Lips pressed together. Staring at the ground, Kezan kept pushing me. I was speechless. He's the female lead. The female lead who's destined to torment me and send me to jail. Even though I never bullied him as a kid. I even took care of him. But who knows if he remembers gratitude or holds grudges? Who could understand my suffering? Sigh. Even though I knew I shouldn't be fooled by this look, I still couldn't help but soften. I sat beside him. His eyes instantly lit up with joy, then turned red. Tears slowly welled up, forming droplets. He gazed at me with tearful eyes. It felt like my heart had been punched. What kind of sin have I committed? Brother ... His soft voice sent chills down my spine. So delicate, so pitiful that it was a direct hit. I listened to you. Brother, don't ignore me. Please. Those misty, innocent eyes looked up at me, whispering in plea. Feeling soft-hearted is normal, right? An ordinary day. An ordinary class dismissal. Ling Qingyan suddenly appeared. Standing at the classroom door, he looked at me with both anticipation and caution. Sitting in the second row near the door, Brother Gui, he said, eyes fixed on me, lowering his gaze, then lifting it again, looking slightly uneasy. So obedient it made my heart ache. The bustling classroom seemed to freeze at this moment. Everyone turned to look at him. Amidst envious gazes, I walked up to him. The eyes of the girls noticeably dimmed. Bright and delicate, kind of cute, but still within a controllable range. I grabbed his sleeve and led him to an empty classroom next door. What's wrong? Do you need something? He lowered his head, one foot rubbing against the floor. A soft voice. Brother ... Today is my birthday. He looked up, eyes shimmering like flames of anticipation. Brother, can you spend my birthday with me? Once again, I softened. Every time, I softened. This is a disease. I need treatment. I immediately took out my phone and transferred him to Million. Go buy yourself a cake. Brother has class. Be good. I steeled my heart and walked back to class. Just as I sat down, Wang Shenyu gave me a solid elbow to the stomach. It hurt like hell. You beast. Beast. Kezan grabbed my face, forcing me to look at the classroom door. Do you see that? Beast. The little junior's eyes are red from grievance. What did you do? Liu Yi quickly grabbed my stuff, packed it up and slung it over my neck, then shoved me toward the door. Beast, go comfort the goddess. I found myself awkwardly facing Ling Qingyan once again. I tried to calm my mind, ran my fingers through my hair, and adjusted the bag slung over my shoulder. Let's go. It's okay if you don't want to, brother. I'm used to celebrating my birthday alone. Once you get pushed out, you think you can go back in. I'll walk in front. Let's go. How do you want to celebrate your birthday? Did I upset you, brother? No. Brother, can I hold your hand? Aren't girlfriends supposed to hold their boyfriends' hands? What? Boyfriend? Is this girl under a spell or something? Or did she hit her head in an accident over these 10 years? She actually reached out to hold my hand. I immediately took half a step back. Kid, we are just normal friends, okay? She tilted her head. With an innocent face, she asked, Brother, aren't you a boy? A boy is a boyfriend. I was speechless. Unbelievable. I forced a stiff smile. Next up, the carousel. Cotton candy disco. Spin wheel, ice cream. Ferris wheel ... my poor old bones. Got out of the taxi. In front of me was a 4-star hotel. I was about to explode. I worried I might collapse. Trembling, I asked the little girl. What does this mean? Ling Qingyan turned her head and looked down shyly. Doesn't the internet say that after 18, you can ... She bit her lower lip awkwardly. Glanced at me shyly. Blushing, she said, Goodbye. I turned around and ran, jumped back into the taxi. Screamed at the top of my lungs, Driver, go. The driver hit the gas. The car sped off instantly. Escape was the priority. I seriously texted Ling Qingyan. Sent her a message. Junior, you're still young. Focus on your studies. Don't rush to find a boyfriend. I'm just your senior. A normal senior. If you can't differentiate our relationship, then we shouldn't keep in touch. Just as I sent the message, she immediately sent a video call, as if she had been holding her phone, waiting for my reply. I fumbled to hang up and turned off my phone. That small action felt like I had run 3,000 meters. My heart was pounding wildly. I gasped for breath. Damn. Scared me to death. I slept soundly. In my dream, I was saving a dizzy girl on the disco ride. Completely disoriented, Ling Qingyan clung tightly to my neck. With a chilling smile, she said, Brother, you can't escape now. I jolted awake, breathing heavily. That was terrifying. I calmed myself down. Then I looked up to see Wang Chengyu staring at me in disapproval. I sat up abruptly. What? Wang Chengyu asked me. What did you say to Ling Qingyan last night? She was crying under her blanket in the middle of the night. Ling Qingyan actually cried. Who cried? What did that jerk do to make someone cry? Liu Yi leaned over curiously. Kezan sat on the opposite bed. Gui, you're really a heartbreaker. I sighed and turned my phone back on. There were several messages from Ling Qingyan. Brother, I'm sorry for making things difficult for you. You don't like me, but I kept pushing forward. It must have been annoying. Brother, I really do like you. Please don't ignore me. Brother, are you really going to ignore me? I could almost imagine Ling Qingyan looking pitiful, sniffling and crying as she sent those messages. I was truly a sinner. Then I replied no. I fell asleep. After sending it, I smacked my own hand. Damn it, I couldn't resist softening up. Liu Yi poked me and said, You can still retract it. I nodded okay. But it was too late. I must have been possessed just now. The next morning, my phone rang. Brother, I brought you breakfast. My groggy head instantly sobered up. I stared at that line of text, lost in thought. So this is what listening to me looks like. This is the awareness of a normal junior. I looked at Kezan and said, I'm skipping the morning class. Consider me absent. Kezan turned around and smirked provocatively. If you don't go down, we'll carry you down. Wang Chengyu and Liu Yi silently made an okay gesture. I hurried downstairs. Under the ginkgo tree stood a girl in white, elegant and radiant. Brother, Ling Qingyan strode over, smiling brightly like the sun. It felt like no happiness in the world could compare to hers. Besides bringing me breakfast in the morning, she would accompany me to class whenever she was free. She reserved seats for me in the library. Sometimes she sent me milk tea or spicy hot pot via delivery. My roommates praised her thoughtfulness. I had nothing to say. She invited me to walk around the school track, to watch a club performance, to see a movie, to watch the freshmen's tournament. This girl had completely ignored the just a senior and junior label. When I questioned her, she just looked at me innocently. With a careful yet aggrieved expression, she said, Brother, did I do something wrong again? Is a junior not allowed to invite her senior to a movie? Is walking and chatting not okay either? It's not like we held hands. The junior is innocent. It must be the senior who's too demanding, right? During the National Day cultural performance, she was in a group dance. That night, she practiced late. She asked me to pick her up. I thought, since she was a girl, it might not be safe. So I went to the dance studio. When I arrived, Ling Qingyan stood at the entrance in a black dress. She was gazing at a painting on the opposite wall. The lighting was dim. The walls were covered with artworks from fine art students. At a quick glance, the dark, empty dance studio behind her looked like an endless abyss. With a gaping mouth, as if it was about to swallow her whole. Or maybe she was the master of that monster, with claws outstretched, waiting for its prey to fall into the trap. A contradiction. It seemed like she sensed my gaze. She turned her head, looking directly at me. Her sharp, piercing gaze was icy cold. My heart skipped a beat. Then, Ling Qingyan's eyes curved. Her gaze softened and a bright, innocent smile bloomed. "Brother," she called softly, sweet and gentle. A chill crawled up from the solace of my feet, spiraling around my heart. My chest tightened suddenly. She waved goodbye to her fellow dancers. I walked downstairs with Ling Qingyan. Then she pulled a rose from behind a flower pot, a cup of milk tea from behind a sculpture, and a box of desserts from behind a vase. The dance studio was on the 3rd floor, in a stairwell corridor, decorated with greenery and clay sculptures. Sculptures were cleverly embedded into the walls, creating a unique visual experience. The interplay of light and shadow, shirts, plants, and artwork blending yet distinct. Each was a side of its own. Together, they formed another kind of beauty. The first time I saw this wall, I was amazed. After 3 years, it became ordinary. But today, every little alcove held surprises and anticipation. When we reached the last alcove on the 1st floor, my heart pounded wildly. I held my breath involuntarily. An old man like me, actually, feeling excited over a surprise prepared by a girl. Embarrassed, yet thrilled. A feeling of being valued and cared for. Ling Qingyan reached into the alcove and pulled out a red velvet box. The excitement stunned me for a second, but then I snapped back to reality. This wasn't right. She was only 18, and if there was a proposal, it should be from me. The box opened. Inside was a woven red string bracelet, with 2 red beads attached. I wanted to strangle my own overthinking self. "Happy birthday, brother." Kezan, the little guy, in pursuit of. The group decided to watch a romance movie. I was doomed just thinking about watching a movie with Ling Qingyan. Made me a little excited, and a little embarrassed. The cinema was dim and hazy. Only the flickering light from the screen danced in the darkness. Bright one moment, dark the next. To avoid any misunderstandings, we deliberately sat far apart. Fortunately, the theater was nearly empty. From my seat, I could clearly see Wang Shengyu sitting in the lower left and Kezan on my right. "Brother, why aren't you talking to me?" She suddenly grabbed my hand. I quickly pulled away. Ling Qingyan pursed her lips, her eyes bright and glistening in the dim light. I sucked in a sharp breath. That soft and innocent look was really kind of cute. "Brother, when will you let me be your girlfriend?" I swallowed nervously. "You're great, but you're too young. You're only 18. Ling Qingyan suddenly leaned in closer. A glimmer of mischief flashed in her eyes. Her warm breath brushed against my ear. A shiver ran down my spine. I shot up from my seat. The popcorn spilled everywhere. She tilted her head up at me, her eyes shining like stars in the dim light. That upward gaze gave off an inexplicable sense of destiny. "Hey, you're blocking the screen." A voice from behind sounded irritated. I quickly dropped into the empty seat beside me, staring straight at the movie screen. Ling Qingyan had changed. She was no longer that gloomy, fierce little girl. And I had changed too. I was no longer so innocent. "Brother, lift your foot." Her voice was suddenly so close. My heart lurched. I reflexively pulled my foot away. Looking down, I saw Ling Qingyan crouched under the seat, picking up the popcorn I had spilled, holding up the hem of her lawn dress, the fabric already stained. For some reason, it reminded me of that New Year's Eve, when kids went door to door collecting candy and red envelopes, and I quietly slipped mine into her hands. I wished her a happy new year. She held onto her clothes just like that. For once, she showed a rare smile, her bright white teeth dazzling in the light. Too bad we couldn't spend a third New Year's together. The image of her lying on a hospital bed flashed in my memory. Silently, I crouched down to help pick up the popcorn. Just this once, I softened, and every time after that, I softened too. Ling Qingyan smiled sweetly, her eyes curving into crescents. "Brother, you're so nice." That nice guy card was handed out so smoothly. I replied, "You're nice too." Back in the dorm, I found a red velvet box inside my bag. Tucked inside was a small note, neatly written in delicate script. Brother, don't these two red beads look like adzuki beans? Do you know what it means to yearn for someone deeply? A rush of heat shot up to my head. My face instantly burned. Slowly, I opened the box. Inside, rested two red, smooth, and glossy earrings. Hey, what's that in your hand? Wang Shangyu's loud voice suddenly rang out. I quickly snapped the box shut and stuffed it into my bag. Nothing, but three guys surrounded me, determined to snatch it. I pulled out the box, hiding the note, then endured a round of sarcastic teasing. I could handle it. Lin Qingyan accompanied me to class and found a love letter inside my textbook. I hadn't expected that. She held a thin envelope between her index and middle fingers. On the white cover, a bright red heart was drawn, along with the words Jiu Huai. Brother, what is this? Her voice trembled. It was hoarse and low. Her eyes turned red, a mix of hope and despair, as if waiting for me to lie to her, but also knowing she couldn't change reality. She looked as if she was in a fragile, breaking state. I thought a simple love letter shouldn't warrant such a reaction, like the end of the world, like a looming disaster, like a separation between life and death, betrayal and abandonment. A love letter. What do you mean by that? In front of me, Liu Yi leaned over our desk. He turned back and whispered, the 9th love letter. The 9th love letter from the math genius. I poked his forehead with my pen. Shut up. Brother, did you read them all? His voice dropped even lower, so low it almost carried no emotion. Wang Shangyu leaned in. Read them all, and destroyed them all. These two are just bitter, troublemaking beasts who thrive on chaos. It seemed like he let out a small laugh, a very faint one, as if he had reached the peak of pain. Upon closer look, his eyes shimmered with unshed tears. The corners of his eyes were red. I felt like a terrible person. Guilt surged in my chest, so strong it made me shiver. I had to explain. Suddenly, Lin Qingyan stood up and walked straight out of the classroom through the side door. The professor on the podium even teased. Little one, you're not staying to finish the class with your senior? Shocking, so even the professor knew him. Lin Qingyan still politely replied, Good morning, professor. I have something urgent, so I can't stay for the rest of the class. No worries, no worries. Go ahead. What was with this elder-like kindness and indulgence? For several days, Lin Qingyan didn't contact me first. It seemed like he had given up. He suddenly stopped orbiting around me, and somehow, I wasn't used to it. It felt like something was missing around me. Kazan scolded me, saying I deserved it. Wang Shangyu and Liu Yi kept calling me a scumbag, then told me to go find Lin Qingyan. They even said they had explained things to his roommates, that they would tell Lin Qingyan it was all a misunderstanding. I wasn't part of the National Day cultural performance, but for some reason, I put on the red string bracelet, even though I knew that the people on stage couldn't possibly see anyone's hands in the sea of faces below. I must have lost my mind when I saw him up there in a small camisole, radiant and dazzling under the stage lights. Listening to the whistles and praises from the surrounding boys drove me absolutely crazy. I buried my head and rushed backstage. When he walked in, I pulled a trench coat over his head and pushed him into the tiny dressing room. Brother, you should get changed first. I couldn't stay for long. The backstage supervisor told me to get out. I messaged him, I'll go buy you a milk tea. Wait for me. I came back with the milk tea in hand, only to see Lin Qingyan chatting and laughing with another guy. At a glance, I knew he was the male lead. In the book, he was described with one phrase, as gentle and refined as spring sunshine, bringing warmth to those around him, but never too intensely. A break from classes. The counselor gave us a few spots for a one-year exchange program at Jingbai University. I held the application form, hesitating, and I slapped my right hand twice hard. Still hesitating? What kind of unrealistic fantasies am I still holding on to? Even the male lead has grown indifferent. I went to the library to read. Suddenly, someone sat across from me. Lin Qingyan looked at my brother. This time, when he said brother, it was completely different. Before, his tone lifted at the end, giving off an air of dependence and innocence. This time, the words seemed to slip through his clenched teeth. The ending tone sank, as if I were his sworn enemy. His gaze was icy, yet his smile bloomed like a flower. Brother, you really are popular, huh? These past few days, brother, have you not thought about me at all? I looked at him, feeling an inexplicable fear. The sheepskin was torn away, revealing the fangs of a ravenous wolf. Not pretending anymore. Without a word, he slowly stood up, reaching out to grip my chin. Every hair on my body instantly stood on end. A chill ran down my spine. I also heard that brother likes obedient girls. He leaned in close. His breath was soft and fragrant. Brother, you're killing me. Am I still not obedient enough? Why don't you like me? But you're so obedient yourself. Let go of me first. I grabbed his hand. He used his other hand to pinch my earlobe, gently pulling at it. I felt completely numb, yet I couldn't just push him away. He grinned, staring at me intently. A debt for a meal should be repaid with one's life. Brother, let me repay my debt to you, okay? I responded, your humble servant, with a bit of rising anger. At this rate, my soul might just fly away. So he had recognized me all along. Was he just playing with me? Little one, brother doesn't like being toyed with. This time, I'll let you off. Thank you, brother, for sparing my life. I'll devote myself to you. Then, I think I need to calm down. The final deadline. One submitted my application form, then hurriedly packed my things, and arrived early at Jingbai University. Back in the day, travel was slow. Meeting someone meant traversing mountains and long roads. Now, if you think of someone, even if one is in Huajing and the other in hardship, they can still be close. A grudge formed in the morning, a grave dug by the afternoon. I silently withdrew my foot from the next step down. Lin Qingyan stood below, smiling up at me. I sighed, deciding to have a proper talk with him. At the cafe, he obediently held my hand, smiling so sweetly, his brows and eyes full of emotion. Brother, it's been so long. I politely responded, yes, it's been a long time, brother. I stood so high up there. Did you see me? Lin Qingyan's eyes were soft and bright. When he looked at people, there is a version of a clear spring flowing over stones. I remained silent. Why didn't my brother come looking for me? I asked back. Why should he come looking for you? His calmness and tranquility had the slightest hint of intensity. Like thin ice on the river's surface, beneath the cracks, the calm exterior revealed its hidden depth and madness. Brother, it has been 10 years. Have you ever thought about me? When faced with a question one doesn't want to answer, one can choose to ask back, do you hate me? Why did you lie to me? Did you enjoy watching me act like a fool, being played around by you? Did it make you happy? Lin Qingyan stared at me intently, as if searching for something on my face. The clarity in his eyes was gone. They were unusually sharp. This was the first time I saw such an expression in a girl's eyes. But then he smiled again. His rosy lips parted slightly. His neat white teeth appeared starkly cold, as if he was about to lunge forward and bite me. Brother, I skipped from first year of high school to third year. I crossed the chasm of time to get into Jingbai. But you weren't there. So I retook the exam and struggled again. This sentence carried a lot of weight. The most shocking thing was, how did Lin Qingyan know I would apply to Jingbai University? The original owner of this body had indeed applied there. I worked so hard to chase after my brother. But what kind of chase was this? Was it the chase of a hunter? I looked at him cautiously. What exactly do you want? His face remained relaxed. Nothing. Just repaying my brother for giving me food. I laughed in anger. Repayment, pretending to be innocent while playing with me. This is your so-called repayment? I don't see any gratitude, but I do see revenge. Clear as day. Brother, don't call me brother. I'm not your brother. I can't afford to be your brother. His face suddenly darkened. Clearly, nothing has changed. It just feels like a chilling wind is surrounding Lin Qingyan. An eerie coldness. His gaze is icy and piercing. Go back. I'm heading to my dorm. Lin Qingyan didn't leave. He just squatted at the school gate. If I don't go out, he won't leave. Heavy snowflakes started falling from the sky. The sky grew darker and colder. I even saw someone post on their moments. Midwinter. Seeing a love-struck girl. I scolded myself. Being soft-hearted is truly an incurable disease. I rushed to the school gate. Lin Qingyan, almost turned into a snowman, lifted his head. His face was completely red. His lips were bluish, but he still gave me a triumphant smile. I just knew it. A soft-hearted god wouldn't just ignore me. Just as I moved closer, he slowly stood up, then collapsed into my arms. Are you feeling unwell? Dizzy? I'll take you to the hospital. No, I won't go. I quickly booked a hotel online, then got a taxi to take him there. As soon as the heater was on, his face turned even redder, unnaturally so. I touched his forehead. It was burning hot. You have a fever. I'm taking you to the hospital. No, you'll leave me there. I sighed helplessly. Take a hot shower. I'll go buy you some cold medicine. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand. Can I still call you brother? Ling Qingyin's voice was heavy with congestion, his voice low and weak. He looked at me cautiously. I nodded randomly. I took off my down jacket, then helped Ling Qingyin take off his shoes. His shoes were soaking wet, almost frozen solid. His socks were completely drenched. The cuffs of the pants were wet, and his feet were cold and pale. They were even slightly frostbitten. This isn't good. His feet are frozen. If he touches hot water like this, he'll get chilblains. I squatted down and rubbed his feet, rubbing them, while cursing myself for being a hopelessly soft-hearted fool. Ankle and step. Toes, solace, until they turned red and warmed up. Hurry up and take a shower. As I got up, he had unknowingly sat up. Suddenly, he lunged forward, cupped my face, and kissed me wildly, until I found myself face to face with the soft ceiling light. Only then did I suddenly snap out of it. I flipped over and pinned him down, restraining his hands. He just gazed at me. "GY, I like you." I panicked at a loss, scrambling to get up. "I'll go buy you some medicine." He grabbed my sleeve. "Will you come back?" Ling Qingyin's eyes. For a moment, I saw his childhood self. Cold and desperate, with a madness that seemed ready to drag someone down with him. Yes, he slowly let go, tilting his head to look at me. The corners of his mouth lifted. His eyes were cold. "You better." When I left, he was sitting on the floor. When I returned with the medicine, he was still sitting on the floor. I rushed over and helped him up. I counted to 1,571. He stared at me. "GY, if you leave me again, I'll go crazy." Escaping wasn't realistic. I thought about my relationship with Ling Qingyin. If as a child, it was sympathy. If I saw him as a younger sister, who needed care? Then from the moment I saw him at the school opening ceremony, those feelings must have started to change. I didn't want to admit I was shallow, but that sympathy, all that anger and jealousy, I really did end up falling for him, just like the original. Since that's the case, why not try moving forward? When love is zero, youth chapter. The point of my rebirth didn't seem right. Because just now, my dad sobered up, and he didn't get to drink warm water. He got angry and kicked me to the ground. My knee scraped open. My forehead hit the wall. After a brief dizziness, I realized I had returned to my childhood. I couldn't believe it. Because just a second ago, I was enjoying watching him kneel before me, crying so miserably. And now, unconsciously, I wandered around, following the chaotic memories in my mind, lost in thought. Why, as I walked home, did I see a piece of candy? His eyes were filled with distress and heartache. I found it surprising. A small candy wrapped in green transparent paper. I had found one before. That older boy in 3rd grade. I had stolen it from him. And he beat me until my head was bleeding. When I got home, my dad beat me half to death again. GY. No, I mean, not GY. I held that piece of candy in my hand, recalling that most of my childhood pain came from GY. He was the one who bullied me on purpose. He was the one who called it others bullying. He was the one who framed me, blamed me. But looking back, after I hit him on the head with a rock, everything seemed to change. He carefully picked up the small cake that had fallen to the ground. He gently pinched off the dirty parts and placed it on his house's fence for me to take. That was the cake I had always wanted to eat in my past life, but never got the chance to. In my past life, GY had crushed it under his foot. He wouldn't even let me pick it up and eat it. No matter how much I tried to compensate for it when I grew up. Even after growing up, that little cake always felt like a regret. After 2 lifetimes, I finally got to eat that little cake. And it was truly delicious. Like the most wonderful taste in the world. If only I had been reborn earlier. Then I could have really tasted that little cake. He brought me food. Even if it was just leftovers. I never had the heart to eat that piece of candy. I put it in a medicine bottle and carried it with me always. Wherever I went, I took it along until it expired. Even when it started to go bad, I still kept it. No one ever knew it was my candy. GY was so good to me. Sweet potatoes, eggs. He taught me how to grow vegetables, tutored me in my studies. I was a cunning person. I deliberately performed poorly on tests. So he would tutor me. And I would intentionally get the questions wrong. I loved seeing him troubled over me, worried and frustrated. So mad he would even hit me. But that kind of hitting was different. The other kind of hitting was out of disgust, out of hatred, out of anger. But GUY's hitting was out of care, out of disappointment, out of worry, out of wanting me to do better. Ever since I could remember, no one had ever cared about me. Whether I lived or died, no one cared. But now, GUY cared. I was finally someone worth caring about. So I didn't let the teacher read my essay. If it were read, everyone would know how good GUY was. They would try to take him from me. When he came back from the city, he brought me firecrackers and a spinning top. He even bought me a new pair of shoes and took me to visit every household for New Year greetings. I wouldn't let his cousin call him brother, because he was my brother, mine alone. But I never got to wear my new shoes. I placed them carefully beside my pillow, planning to wear them first thing in the morning on New Year's Day, as soon as I woke up. But when I woke up, my dad had thrown the shoes into the stove. All that was left was the overwhelming, pungent smell of burnt plastic and the blackened ashes in the bathhouse. I didn't dare tell GUY. I was afraid he would be upset. My mom was a university student who had been deceived. After giving birth to me, she originally wanted to stay and live a good life. But my dad beat her, cursed her, so she ran away in secret. My dad hated families with sons. He wanted to kill all the boys in the village. He told me to lure GUY back home, so he could bury him alive. I picked up a brick and smashed it at him. This time, I didn't run. I just wanted to kill him. To end this once and for all. But in the end, I was still too weak. He strung me up. I kicked at him with all my might, cursed him with every vile word I knew. I counted to 4,372. Just before I lost consciousness, I saw GUY wearing Spider-Man pajamas, his face full of anxiety and anger. Then he draped the pajamas over me, like Spider-Man rescuing a suffering soul. A person's life is filled with unforgettable moments. And all my unforgettable moments were because of Ji Hwai. On New Year's Eve, Ji Hwai came to see me too. New clothes, new shoes. Lucky money, I called his grandfather. Other than warning him to be careful of me, I also had Ji Hwai pick up the phone. Told him to come get me. He answered and said, "Stay in the hospital. I'll come get you on the weekend." But he never came. The weekend passed, then Wednesday. He still didn't come. And suddenly, I realized ... to him, I was just a child. Maybe I should take on a different image. Appear before him in a new way. So, I left. I would find him again when I grew up. When I missed him. Uncle couldn't help but call his house. But now, the call wouldn't go through. The number was no longer in service. I chased after time's abyss. Skipped grades and got into Jingbai. But he wasn't there. I even endured my disgust to attend Luba's funeral, hoping to ask my old neighbors. They told me his entire family had moved to the city, and that he had taken a difficult entrance exam. I stood by the low wall of his house. At the spot where he had left the candy, I took a photo. Half sky, half mountain ridges. People are creatures of obsession. Like the cake they never got to eat as a child. The candy they once picked up. And that person who devoured books like they were old meals. Only by possessing them can one truly be healed. Ji Hwai, I will always catch up to you.